3, 4, 5.
I was 15 when it happened. A Friday night in late September. The kind of night where the air starts to bite a little when you breathe in. My parents had gone out to dinner with some family friends, saying they'd be home late. Around 8, my best friend and neighbor Chris came over. He lived right across the street. We were the same age, grew up together, practically brothers. Usually when we hung out, we'd stay in the basement, play games, or watch movies. But after a couple of hours, we got bored. That's when Chris suggested we play hide and seek. At first, I laughed. It sounded stupid. We hadn't played that since we were like 10. But after a bit of back and forth, I agreed. The house wasn't big, but it had plenty of places to hide, and with the lights off, it could get creepy fast. We decided to make it scarier. I turned off every light except the one in the kitchen. The shadows instantly deepened. The air itself felt different, quieter, heavier. The rules were simple. No going outside, no attic, no crawl space. Everything else was fair game. Chris volunteered to hide first. I covered my eyes in the living room and started counting to 50. I could hear his footsteps thudding down the hall at first, then silence. When I hit 50, I said, "Ready or not, here I come." The kitchen was empty, so I started there. Then the hallway. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The closet near the front door. Nothing. Upstairs next. Each creak of the wooden stairs echoed louder than it should have. My own heartbeat felt too loud in my chest. I checked my parents' bedroom first, under the bed, behind the dresser. Nothing. Then my room. Still nothing. That left the guest room. The door was cracked open just slightly. I remember how quiet the house felt then, like it was holding its breath with me. I nudged the door open slowly, waiting for Chris to jump out and scare me. But the room stayed still. The air inside was cold. I bent down to check under the bed. Empty. I opened the closet, just boxes and coats. At that point, I figured he must have gone down to the basement. When I got down there, the air was even colder. The basement light flickered once before stabilizing. My voice echoed off the concrete as I called his name. No answer. Then I saw movement, a shadow shifting behind a stack of boxes. I jumped before realizing it was him, crouched there with a grin. He laughed and said, "Took you long enough." We switched. My turn to hide. I went upstairs and slid under the guest bed, pulling the bed skirt down to cover me. It smelled faintly of dust. I could hear Chris counting downstairs. His voice echoed faintly through the house. My heart thudded against the floor as I tried to stay perfectly still. Eventually, the sound of his footsteps started. I heard him open the bathroom door, then my parents' room. The floorboards creaked with every step. Finally, his footsteps reached the guest room. I could see the outline of his shoes stop right next to the bed through the thin fabric of the bedskirt. I held my breath. My chest ached from trying not to move. His shoes shifted slightly. I could hear him breathing. Then, silence. I was sure he'd figured it out. I waited for him to yank the bedskirt up, but instead, he turned and walked out. I stayed there for another minute, then 2. Finally, I crawled out, expecting to find him waiting somewhere, maybe trying to scare me back. But the house was quiet, too quiet. I called out, "Game's over." A few seconds later, from the basement, a voice shouted back, Chris's voice. "I'm still looking." "Where are you hiding?" I froze. I said, "I'm not hiding anymore. I'm in the kitchen." The basement went silent. Then, a moment later, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Fast, heavy ones. Chris appeared in the kitchen doorway looking pale and confused. He asked, "How the hell did you get upstairs so fast?" I told him. "I didn't. I was under the guest bed." He frowned. No, you weren't. I checked that room. I swear I heard someone moving under there, breathing. I shook my head. I didn't move. We argued for a few seconds, but eventually we shrugged it off. Still, something about the way he said it stuck with me, the certainty in his voice. We played another round, but my nerves were shot. Every sound made me jump. Every floorboard creak, every gust of wind outside. Then, while I was counting, I heard it. A soft thud upstairs. I stopped counting and listened. Nothing else. When I finished, I went upstairs to check. The hallway was empty. The air felt thicker. My room, the bathroom, the guest room, all empty. I found Chris hiding in the laundry room and told him I'd heard something. He brushed it off. We went back to the couch, turned the TV on. The noise was comforting, until we heard it again. A heavy thump from upstairs, like something large had fallen. Chris looked at me and said, "Your parents?" I shook my head. They weren't due home for hours. We muted the TV. The silence pressed in again. Then came another sound. A slow, steady creaking. The sound of footsteps, coming from the hallway upstairs. We looked at each other. I whispered, "We should check." He whispered back, "No way." But if someone had broken in, we couldn't just sit there. So, I grabbed the fireplace poker and started up the stairs with Chris right behind me. Each step groaned beneath us. My hands were shaking. When we reached the top, I saw it immediately. The guest room door, now fully closed. I knew I'd left it cracked open. We stood there, frozen. Then from behind the door came a noise, a slow, dragging sound, like fabric being pulled across the carpet. Chris whispered, "We should leave." I wanted to, but something in me needed to know. I raised the poker and reached for the knob. My hands were slick with sweat. I pushed the door open fast. The room was dark, still. The bed, the dresser, the curtains, everything exactly how I'd left it. The closet door was half open. I took a step closer, my heart pounding in my throat. I yanked it open. Nothing. Just coats. Boxes. Chris exhaled a nervous laugh, and I tried to match it. We both pretended it was nothing. Nerves, maybe. But then, we heard it again. Not from upstairs this time. From downstairs. The unmistakable sound of the front door opening and closing. We froze. Chris's voice cracked as he whispered, "Someone's in the house." I felt everything inside me drop. We ran down the hall into my room, turned off the light, and crouched beside the bed. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and fast. Then, faint footsteps. Someone walking slowly across the first floor. They moved toward the basement door. The hinges squealed as it opened. The steps began descending one by one. Chris and I looked at each other, relief mixed with terror. Whoever it was had gone downstairs. That was our chance. We bolted, ran straight down the stairs, through the kitchen, out the back door, and across the street to his house. We didn't stop running. His parents were still awake. When we told them what happened, they immediately called the police. When the officers searched my house, they found nothing. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. No one hiding in the basement. They said it was probably our imaginations. That the house creaked. That maybe a window draft made the door move. But I know what I heard. We both do. Someone was in that house. For weeks after, I couldn't sleep. Every sound at night felt like footsteps. Every creak like breathing. That was the last time I ever played hide and seek. Chris and I don't really talk about it anymore. But sometimes, when we look at each other, we both know exactly what the other's thinking. That night. The night the game turned into something else. Even now, years later, when I close my eyes, I can still hear it. That slow dragging noise on the carpet, the creak of footsteps above me, and the quiet voice from the basement asking where I was hiding. We never found out who it was, and maybe that's the worst part.